Shopify helped businesses break sales records over the holidays with the world's best converting checkout. Let's hear that one more time. The world's best converting checkout. Shopify's legendary checkout makes it easier for customers to shop on your website, across social media, and everywhere in between. Now that's music to your ears. Any way you spin it, you can be a smash hit with Shopify. Start your $1 a month trial today at shopify.com/records.
Wendy's Coffee House. Hello, I'm Wendy. Okay, life after death. Joe McQuillen, he wrote his first book about losing his son, Christopher. Christopher died in 2016. And that was when he basically was introduced to the fact that Christopher might not be in the physical form, but he's very much present in the non-physical. And now he's back with book number 2, and he still connects and is connecting with Christopher. And Christopher's giving him an education from his perspective about the afterlife. The book, we're not done yet, Pop.
I did do on a whim, maybe to a medium, 16 years before. And most of the reading was kind of mundane because there wasn't a sense of urgency. But when she got to the end of the reading, she said, "Your dad's here. And he's telling you railroad and showing me a caboose." This is before Google. This was before, and my old man was not a famous guy. He was an amazing man, but hard-working blue-collar guy, raised 10 kids on a railroader salary, worked 16 hours a day. And just a magnificent fellow. His nickname was Iron Joe. So it dawned on me that if Iron Joe was able to give her a message, that meant he was somewhere. And if he was somewhere, my boy was with him, because that's just how McQuillens roll. That's how we circle the wagons. So all of a sudden I thought, okay, Chris is somewhere. He's on his way. It was there. The old man's there. They're together. How do I figure this out?
Okay, my guest is Joe McQuillen, and you've written another book, or a previous book, but this time, take 2, you're actually incorporating more of your connection with your son, Christopher. And if you could do me a favor and give the backstory on this so anybody who has not heard your story before will know what we're talking about.
Sure, Wendy. First of all, thanks for having me on and spreading Christopher's word out there. The story started in first week of January 2016. Christopher had been home for Christmas vacation along with a bunch of his high school buddies. They had all had a reunion and decided to spend the last weekend before going back to college at a friend's lake house in Wisconsin, about an hour and a half north of us. And the plan was to shoot some pool at the local tavern, kick up their heels a little bit, go back to the lake house. There was a dozen friends. Go back to the lake house, finish the party, and then everybody disperse and go back to the Chicagoland area the next day and head off to school the following couple of days. And that was the plan. And Shelley and I were kind of pleased because we were worried about his last weekend being in the city and any involvement of hanging out in the city and drinking and celebrating is nerve-wracking. So we were, kind of relieved that he was going to be in this blue-collar setting of a small lake in Wisconsin. So I was getting ready on Sunday morning to watch the Buffalo Bills game. I grew up in Buffalo, and Chris and his little brother William and I are huge Bill fans, and so we were excited because we were going to get to watch the game together with Chris being home. And I got a text from the young man whose parents own the lake house. Said, "Mr. McHugh, Chris and 3 of his friends are missing." So I immediately grabbed my Labrador, my winter coat and hunting boots, and jumped in the car, started heading up north, and really expected Wendy to find him in a boathouse or somebody else's cottage on a couch with a pretty co-ed or a hangover or something. And halfway up, I got a call though from the lad whose parents owned the house. The uncle lived down the street, and he called and said, "Joe, that's it's no longer a search but a recovery. All 4 boys have drowned." You don't know how to process a message like that. Of course, I hung up, finished the drive, got up there kind of in a fog, which I think you could probably understand. And it's this day walking into that house, looking out the window, seeing little pockets of people crying and hugging, and kids all looking hung dog, and the parents weeping, and uniformed people with notepads running around, and you look out through the storm, the picture window onto the lake. It's a beautiful home overlooking this lake, and I can see right now, the police boats and the lights and the rescue workers and divers and etc. It's kind of tattooed on my mind right now, and the feeling at this moment, I had to go through all the details. They won't in Wisconsin. You can't see the body, which I immediately started to make an issue, and then just shut up and figured, let's just roll with this. Nothing's going to change the result. So, they identified with a picture, and there was Chris in my minor league Buffalo Bison's baseball jacket and his Celtic cross, and that smile or that look on his face, and it was him. But there was something, meaning it wasn't him. I mean, something was missing. It was the soul. The soul had gone, and I didn't understand that at this point. I knew nothing about the metaphysical at this point. Real honestly, I wasn't sure how to process any of this. But on the way up, I did recall a visit that I did do on a whim, maybe to a medium, 16 years before, and most of the reading was kind of mundane because there wasn't a sense of urgency. But when she got to the end of the reading, she said, "Your dad's here, and he's telling you railroad and showing me a caboose." This was before Google. This was before, and my old man was not a famous guy. He was an amazing man, but hard-working blue-collar guy, raised 10 kids on a railroader salary, worked 16 hours a day. Just a magnificent fellow. His nickname was Iron Joe. So it dawned on me that if Iron Joe was able to give her a message, that meant he was somewhere. And if he was somewhere, my boy was with him, because that's just how McQuillen's roll. That's how we circle the wagons. So all of a sudden I thought, okay, Chris is somewhere. He's on his way. It was there. The old man's there. They're together. How do I figure this out? Right. So that was actually the beginning of what became my journey. And the name of the first book is My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. Spoiler alert, I found him. And I connect with him pretty often. And that started my search, Wendy.
Okay, and just, reading the first book and talking with you and then coming to this point, you are a different person. This is an extraordinary, a big shift. Can you... what? Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm very fortunate. I've done very well at business, but at heart, I'm a blue-collar guy, a blue-collar kid from Buffalo, New York. And for me to be sitting on the phone with you, with sage burning, 3 candles, holding a crystal, after aligning my chakras, awaiting your phone call. That's not the guy I was before January 3rd, 2016. The Japanese poet Murakami said, once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what storms are all about. And I'm not the same person that walked in, and that's what storms are all about. I will tell you, I'm a better guy. I'm more caring. I cared pretty much only about my family and my friends before. And now I think I still care dearly about them, and I'm very loyal, but I also care dearly about parents who've lost kids, who don't know what to do with the grief and don't know, how to connect, and don't know if it's all over, if there's just blackness now, void, which there isn't. Their kids are around. As the brilliant author Susan Geisman said, they're still right here. You just got to do kind of what I did. And as Chris tells me in the second book often, when he thinks I'm getting a little too big for my britches, you're not an expert, Dad. You're just figuring this out. And that's the truth. I'm about ankle deep in the surf trying to figure this stuff out. Hopefully I'll acquire a little more knowledge before it's my turn to cross over. But that's my role. And that's not the guy I was before January 3rd, 2016, Wendy. Some of the things that you do, though, you provide a mentorship for other parents who've lost kids. And some of the book that you're talking about, people say it's okay and time heals everything. You're like, yeah, right. I like your take on that.
Yeah. Anybody who says time heals all wounds hasn't lost a kid. It never heals. Never, ever, 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 ever. Let me put it this way. To this day, I usually have my moment, maybe it's not every day, but it's pretty often where the tsunami of grief will just overwhelm you. Just that tidal wave just hits you, and what I've learned now is just let it take me out, process it. If I have to walk away, go downstairs, get in my car, stand on the deck, I do it. And then it rolls back out and I can function again. I don't fight it. I don't resist it. But it's never going to go away, But I will, I also tell parents, look, I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I have a wonderful family. I have a nice career. I have loving, amazing friends. I love to play golf. I just had my knee drained so I can play golf. I've had my hip replaced playing hockey a couple of years ago. I fill a lot of my life with activity, right? And so I have a full life. But there's always that little piece of your heart that, or maybe more bigger than a little piece, that crossed over with your child. And you won't be healed until you're connected, until you're together again on the other side. So I have this amazing life, but one foot is on the other side with the child that I adore so much. And I'm real comfortable with that. I'm not ready to go. I'm not. I have work to do. I have books to write, parents to talk to, presentations, phone calls to parents, all of it, documentary here and there. I got a lot to do on this side, and I'm going to do it. And I'm doing it on a relatively current basis, and Chris pushes me to do that. But if God came to me and said, hey, pal, party's over, well, really, party begins. Here's your invite. You're on the other side tomorrow. I'd be okay because I get to spend the next lap around the track with this son that I adore so much. And I know that I'll still be connected with my family on this side. So no hurry to go, but that holds no fear for me now. And just no concerns.
In going back and sharing some of the notes and some of your sessions that you've done with Chris, as you lay out his life and what happened, one of the issues you revisited was the military school. And there was some guilt with, some of the things you've done. So is that an understatement?
Yeah, it's funny. A special part of my heart is for any kids. And Christopher died in an accident, as you and I have discussed at great length. And you've enlightened me to some things. But it was very, very important for Christopher to know that nobody took their own life. Nobody thought 4 boys in a canoe took their own lives, But it's very special, but I did lose a brother to suicide in the 70s. And I have a piece of my heart that just goes out so much to parents who lost kids to suicide, because there's this extra level of guilt that doesn't belong, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't belong, that they put on themselves, that they could have done something different. They could have changed the tide of events, and I got to tell you, I wish I was above that. I wish I was so evolved that I would be able to let that go. But every harsh word, every whatever that I had with him, still is in my memory. I still process it. I still deal with it. I've done all the right things, and I put it on a Chinese lantern and a note and lifted it up and let it go and burned it and done all the ceremonial things, and it still creeps in. That, any harm I could have caused on this side just breaks my heart. Now, the truth of the matter is, he's let that go. I mean, there was nothing of that much significance, right? We had a wonderful relationship. I adored him. I'm saying, smashed the car and come home from Vermont, and I was just livid. It's like, Jesus, man, it's a car. Let it go, and yet, those things come back. But he tells me all that stuff's resolved and gone. That he uses the term bliss, Wendy. That's a good term. His life is bliss. So why would he be hung up on events from, his youth? when he's in a blissful place. And that does take some of the weight of that shame away from me. But, it's there. Every parent has it. And to pretend that it's not going to impact them is unfair. They should know going in, they're going to deal with this stuff. It's useless. It doesn't help. Try to discard it or understand it's, it creeps in, but less and less as time goes by, and more connection with Chris, and more knowing how at peace he is with where he's at and his absolute, love for us. So that's very helpful.
I think you're feeling maybe if I could have done something different, or at least initially that was a thought, but as you're talking and working through this with him, it's very clear that you have dropped some of that that baggage because he's helped. And that's what this book is about. It's about how a parent can come to a different place in their own journey by looking at it from the side that there is no death. There's separation, but there's no death. So I want you to share how you started dealing with Chris, how he came to you, and how this whole adventure began.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a perfect way to put it. So, Chris and I were real, and out to this day. But let's start out by, I have this amazing relationship, and I'm going to explain how it evolved. I have this amazing ability, or I'm the recipient of his amazing ability, I think, to connect with my son and get messages from him, feel him, smell him, know he's around. And it's what a gift I have. But I would, and in these two wonderful books and all the help I've done to other people, I'd give it all up, to be abysmally ignorant of all the things metaphysical and still have my son in my life. I would, but that option's not available. The bell was rung, you can't unring it, right? I mean, it is what it is. So, when he left this side, to go somewhere where I didn't know for sure, all I knew was my old man was there. I wanted to get some knowledge of that, where he's going. So I called the medium from 15, 16 years before, and she's in Surprise, Arizona. She's a good gal, Nancy Myers, and had a couple of phone readings right after Chris transitioned. And she even said to me, I don't know if this is going to work because it's so soon. It's kind of like trying to call your kid when you send him to college and he's still unpacking and hanging up posters, right? It's like, who knows if he has time to talk to you?
Yeah.
You want to talk about meal plans and budgets, and he's like, dude, I'm putting up my posters.
Yes.
But unbelievably, he did come through, and he told her things about how he died that I wouldn't know for a fact, because at the time I believed it, but I didn't know it. Until I wouldn't know for a fact until I got the coroner's report, medical Emily's report, and so she did connect with him, and he did say, Dad, it was just a stupid accident. This wasn't even my idea this time. And that had been reaffirmed a couple of times. In fact, you wouldn't even touch base on it. That this joyride or mission wasn't even his idea. But usually bad decisions were. We saw a tweet, after he had transitioned, it said from when he was at school, and it said, Hawaiian shirt going on, bad decisions to follow. That's kind of my boy.
Yeah.
And I was never one of those parents that blamed anybody else's kids. It was like, I knew who was, there with the game plan of what stupid things to do. And he was usually at the planning table, and I adored him. And I was the same way as a kid. I'm 36 years sober. I was wild, reckless, a wild colonial boy like my kid. And so I was pleased to hear that this wasn't his idea. So I reached out to this medium, and we connected a couple times, and we're still very good friends. In fact, I saw her a couple years ago. I was out, and my youngest was working spring training for my friend in Arizona, and I went out and we had lunch and we talked. And she's a good gal. She does a lot of angel stuff. Her name's Nancy Myers, and she's in Surprise, Arizona. And she, so I got these great info. and like good mediums, it was like I wanted to call every third day. She's like, stop it. He's got things to do over there. He's, let's put some distance between this thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the therapist. You don't want a therapist who's going to see you, treat you for 10 years. You want somebody who's going to help you and cut you loose, right? Like physical therapy, right?
Yes.
And so I respect her, and I think she's a lovely gal and a good medium, a wonderful medium. So then I wanted to see another medium, and I wanted to look into the eyes of a medium that was talking to my son. Now remember, I believe this. Now there's a difference between believing and knowing, and we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I believe this is true, and I was going to keep believing until either I figured out more about it or somebody pulled the carpet out from under me and I found out I was wrong. I read Bob Olson's book, which was amazing. A lot of details about the other side. There was a wonderful book, like a small book about the other side that I had picked up and started reading and research, kind of getting my hands on anything that I could. So I decided, I looked up on a website, mediums in Illinois, and I came, the best guy who had the best reviews and highest ratings, and he did some work with police departments and all that stuff, was a guy named Andrew Anderson. So I figured, okay, I'm going to set a meeting with him and do a reading. And if I get nervous before I do it, I'll just cancel. He didn't ask for any money up front. All he asked was my first name, right? And told me to bring a couple of pictures of my boy or of whoever at the time. He didn't know whoever I wanted to reach.
Joe McQuillen, we're not done yet, Pop. We'll continue with what he learned from the medium. Wendy's Coffee House.
I love finding out thin places. And for me, the great beaches on the Gulf Coast of Florida, thin place. My son just, a connection between the sand, the quartz crystal, the moon, the water, boom, right? Instant connection.
Joe McQuillen, we're not done yet, Pop, about his connection with his son. All right, so the medium, and what did the medium say?
The day before, I had received from Amazon some shamrock seeds that I had ordered. Now, at this point, most of the readers are going to start rolling their eyes. I moved him over from one grave to another because he was buried next to another couple. I didn't see it. We bought a number of graves in a row, plots. Decided to put them on the end near a tree. And the woman who was out there selling us the plots didn't tell us we were burying them next to another couple. So when the snow, and the grave marker wasn't put in there yet, but when the snow melted and their markers appeared, under the snow, it looked like he was their kid. I was with it, and that wasn't going to do. So, he stamped my feet, held my breath, wrote a check, moved him over one. Now I'll occupy that grave. Nobody's ever going to be in the spot that he was in for those 5-6 months. It'll be my place. My wife Sally will be on the outside. So we moved him over, and so the dirt around his grave was loose, and they still hadn't put the grave stone in yet. But the grave around his was loose. They were about to put the stone in, and they had put it because it was June 30th, so they had put in the stone. The dirt was still loose, so I wanted to plant these shamrock seeds, which still show up in the spring, by the way, and that makes me happy. So I on the way to Andrews, I stopped at the grave, which I do often. It's a thin place for me. We can talk about that in a bit, but it's a place I feel close to Chris. I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me like I'm some old man on a park bench feeding pigeons, right? That's not what happened. I go there. I know I feel him around. There's just a nice, comfortable feeling in my soul when I'm sitting at that grave having a cigar with him. So I planted the shamrock seeds. Before I left the house, I have a leather bracelet. Now I also don't look like a guy that would be wearing beaded bracelets and a leather bracelet on my right wrist, but I do. If you see the picture of the book, I have a brush cut and a broken nose and an occasional scar. I don't look like a guy that'd be sitting at my desk with candles burning either, but I do. And so I stopped at the grave, planted the shamrock seeds. I had picked up this leather bracelet he had given me when he was about 6 when we were in Disney World, and his mom said, "Mom, let's get that for Dad and surprise him in the hotel room." And so he gave me this wonderful gift. And I loved it, wore it that weekend, and then put it in my drawer. So I pulled it out, put it on, went up to see Andrew. And, walk into his room, his bed in his house, is a typical mediums then with the pictures and the pictures of the balloons and the Chinese lanterns and huge crystals and amethysts and all the things that come from the whoever the decorator for the metaphysicals are. But it's soothing and loving office. Love it. It's very comfortable. So I walked in, and the first thing he said was, "Hey, saw a picture Christopher's got. I see him, and it's beautiful. He looks like Brad Pitt." And he said, but one thing he did say was, the pictures you gave me, he's smiling and laughing and kind of in a party mode. He said, but there was a dark side of sadness. And we knew that, but that gave me some, insights into, okay, this guy might actually have a clue on my son. Mm-hmm. Then he said, your family said your family on the other side, and there's a lot. He said, your family on this other side came together and to celebrate something. There was an anniversary. What was it? Well, the night before it was Sally and my 30th anniversary, which was pretty impressive, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was, I go, wow, okay. And so we, and then he said, Chris acknowledges that you're wearing the bracelet he gave you. And Chris acknowledges that you planted something at his grave recently. What was that? And I said, it was T-Rex.
Yeah.
That was the moment, Wendy. That moment. In my heart of hearts, I went from believing to knowing.
Yeah.
And I never looked back.
Yeah.
I knew this was, that's why they call them evidential mediums, right? They give you evidence of what's real. He didn't, I wasn't, there wasn't I didn't display this bracelet I had on prominently. I had it, under my sleeve. I was going into work. I didn't even tell my wife about the planting the seeds, not because I was holding anything back. They just came in, and I was just I was doing something on a whim. So that moment, and then he went and told me a whole bunch of amazing, amazing things that are all, every medium visit and every visit that I have with him in spirit is cataloged in the book exactly as it came out. Exactly as it came out. I record every visit. I transcribe every visit. Now, I never thought I was going to write a book. I did this selfishly, Wendy, so that when I got older, even older than I am now, I would sit on a front porch in a rocking chair with a cigar, reading these notes to make me feel closer to my boy who I had lost years before. That was my plan. Yeah. Christian's plan, maybe God's plan, was that I put all this together in a manual that'll help other people connect with their loved ones. So that's how that happened. Now, flash forward 6 months. Started getting up at 3:00 in the morning, coming into my office in our house, which was his bedroom. It's a wonderful, wonderful, loving atmosphere, feeling here, and I still feel him around. So I'd come in here, I'd wake up at 3:00, always 3, kind of crazy. And I figured this out. I had help figuring it out. But I'd come in here and I'd meditate, I'd align my chakras, and I would feel close, and I loved that, So on the anniversary of his crossing, it's 3:00 in the morning, January 3rd, 2017, I came in here, and I was listening to a guided meditation. I'd align my chakras, I'd sage, candles, pictures of him, all the little institutions, things that I picked up along the way, little rituals, and I'm a ritual guy, if something works, I'm not changing, and when I was on a batting streak, my mother hated it because I wouldn't wash my uniform, it's like, in all these years, I haven't changed a lot of that, who my core is, and our kids, when they go into spirit, their personality is the exact same as they were here. They evolve. They get, they evolve as in spirit, but they're the same core person, same core spirit that was here, that had when they occupied their bodies on this side. So I'm doing this, and all of a sudden I'm getting a download from him. And I grabbed a pen, and funny, it's a pen that I picked up from Andrew Anderson. I'd gone to a spirit circle, and he handed out pens, and they're nothing special. But there's a big velocity pens, and on the desk was a Staples, the paper product. legal pad. So to this day, I use, I order Bic Velocity pens by the dozens, and accumulated as many of these staple writing pads. They've stopped producing them. I still have a few, and that's where I take the notes on, because that's what I did the first time, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he came through, and he was literally describing what heaven was like. He said, it's like a beach, beautiful, pink, warm, but the colors are soft and vibrant. Pink, blues, strong greens. The air is warm surrounding us. It's air and love. It's love air everywhere. Nothing hurts. Warm and happy. Always young. Miss you, Dad, but I'll see you soon enough. And he was. I'm like, what the heck is going on? My son's describing, for a better term, heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm writing this down, scribbling it down, not even stopping and thinking, are you losing your friggin' mind? Just wrote. And then here's the kicker, where I knew it wasn't me. Writing this down to put a patch, a bandage on my broken heart. He said to me, Dad, you got to let go of the resentment. I love Scotty. He was a good friend. It wasn't his fault. Now, Scotty was the kid whose parents owned the lake house. Wealthy, a little tolerant of behavior, and so I was mad. I was mad at them for putting my boy in this situation.
Yeah.
For no, Wendy, the truth of the matter is they could have all been at my house and fallen off a garage. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to I needed to be mad at somebody. I'll tell you an experience I had with God the first week. So I couldn't be mad at him anymore,
Uh-huh.
So I needed to be mad at somebody. So I was mad at them. So Chris gives me this directive, Wendy. You got to let go of the resentment. And I was like, okay, Chris, for you, anything. And I'm thinking, Wendy, besides, when will I ever see this kid again, right? It's not like I'm going to have, a reunion of pals who were there when my son drowned, right? I'll never see this kid again. 12 hours later, Sally and I were going to go to the grave on the anniversary at dusk, release a Chinese lantern, what flowers, Well, that was our plan, right? His friends, specifically his college friends, who were just wonderful, and his hometown friends. I get a text from some of his college buddies who are still in my life. 6 years later, they're like family to me. We're at the weddings. We went to the graduation parties. It's amazing. They're part of our daily lives, Mm-hmm. When we don't see each other because of COVID or whatever, we miss each other, and I love these kids. So I get a text that Mr. McHugh, some of us are meeting at 3:30 at the grave. Can you join us? Mm. Right. I thought, isn't that nice? Sure, I will. So I stopped by, threw a cooler, threw some beer and ice in the cooler with some that was in my hockey cooler, and some Gatorade and a box of cigars, and figure, 5 or 6 kids, and we'll sit around and reminisce. Won't that be great? Drove there, and as I pulled in a circular parking lot in this wonderful cemetery, Sacred Heart Cemetery in Winnetka, or in Northbrook, excuse me. I pull in, there's cars everywhere. And I said, look around his grave. There are 40 kids. And it's just through that, whatever those kids have, that coconut telegraph where they all get together. And in the middle of a day in a freezing January in 2017, 40 kids showed up at his grave. And so I went there and just reveled in being with them. And one of the first kids I saw was Scotty, and I thought, holy cow, if Chris didn't set me up for this, if Chris hadn't warned me, if Chris hadn't prepped me, I would be, looking away. It would be awkward. It would be painful. Instead, I embraced him, told him I loved him, told him it wasn't his fault, please,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully spread a little more love than the resentment I had been carrying. But I wasn't ready to let go of that, Wendy. That's why I knew this wasn't a message I was making up, because I made up a different one, than me, holding back and softening my heart and doing the right thing. I wasn't ready to do the right thing, I will tell you, when Chris transitioned, the days, and every parent and somebody's the go-to guy. That was my job, which was, graves, plots, cemeteries, masses, receptions, suits for kids, for my son, other sons, suits to get buried in, that kind of thing. And it was a lot, readings, whatever. And it was a lot. And then taking care of your family, my wife and the kids were still on this side. And at night I'd get home and I'd hit the knees and I'd thank God for my sobriety, my family. But I would say to God, we're not good yet, you and me. You took my kid. I did this for 3 nights. And, I just wanted to make sure God knew where I was coming from, right? And I get a message back that said, I didn't take your son. His recklessness and self-will caused him to come home early. And I welcomed him home. And remember, I lost a son too. So I knew then, only then, that I couldn't hold on to resentment as God either, because God didn't take him. In fact, God was holding me up when I would have never been able to function on my own. So I knew God didn't move us around like chess pieces. I wasn't a pawn. I wasn't paying for my past sins, which were pretty big, by taking my son. It was a very freeing moment, and that relationship with God, I've never looked back. It's grown closer and closer and closer, because I know he has this magnificent world that he's created, and my son's in this blissful place. How could I be mad at him? That's why I knew on that first reading that it wasn't me making this up, because I would have had a whole different dialogue if it was me calling the shots. Mm-hmm. And instead I had this gentle, loving one, and I began to change that moment.
The length that you went to try and develop your own abilities. You even include, how to become better at using your clairvoyance and those kinds of things, coming from somebody who's been there, done that, lost a son, and then regained that connection, that contact. I think is just worth its weight in gold, because you are an experiencer. You're not telling somebody what you suggest because you read it somewhere. You're telling them because this is what you do. This is what you practice. This is who you are.
Yeah, it's a boots on the ground kind of thing. And there's certain things that don't work for me. My wife did a healing that, everybody grieves differently. But William, my baby boy, who's 22, is in Boulder in school, and Caroline, who's 25, who now works with me, wonderful guy. She was teaching in Milwaukee, and with COVID, it all got screwed up. So she's working with me in mortgages, which is what I do. And the other side, and the real world, or the other world. I wouldn't say which one's real, Mm-hmm. But we heal different. Caroline and I heal very similarly, is that we put in every day we filled every moment with activity, so that the pain couldn't take us down. And Sally and William just withdrew. William was a state-ranked lacrosse player. Should have played Division II lacrosse. Just stopped caring about it. And he was heartbroken. His hero, his older brother, who had just started accepting him because of William's athletic prowess and coolness. And what Christopher said, I said, about the kid's cool. He goes, oh man, Dad, that kid's twice as cool as I ever was. That's pretty high praise from a pretty cool guy like Christopher. So William was shattered. So those guys just shut down for 6 months. Sally took a leave of absence, and sent thank you cards and arranged photos and did whatever. And that's how they heal. Everybody's got to heal their own way, right? There isn't one set way, to heal. So when that happened, we all had to figure our own path to find our way to try to heal. And Sally did a phone reading and with a healer it was referred by Rebecca Rosen. She had seen Rebecca Rosen, and I had seen Rebecca Rosen in a group. She came, 250 people came up to us and identified a song that we do at a golf outing, identified a dog that Christopher, had from the and named the dog's name from the fraternity that Christopher would do, blogs with and have a lot of fun. And it was amazing, and identified that Sally's nephew was with us. It was his birthday. It was crazy. I mean, Rebecca Rosen did this 5-minute drive-by in the middle of this auditorium with 250 people, and it wasn't one thing that was all. I mean, it was just so friggin' amazing. So Sally had done a healing with Rebecca Rosen's people, and changed her life, changed her direction. She started coming out of it. Now we never lose the grief, but started coming out of it. For my birthday the following year, she arranged for me to have a reading. Halfway through, I hung up. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't like it. Didn't feel right for me. So it's not like one size fits all. I had seen something about a candle and a mirror and looking into it and spirits behind you and whatever. I tried it. Halfway through it, I freaked out. Took the mirror back to Bed Bath & Beyond. I wanted nothing to do with it, right?
Yes.
But that's how it goes, right? I'm not a big fan of tarot cards. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I think they're effective. I think they work. They're just not for me. I don't want to see a psychic. I don't want to know about, I don't have that long to worry about, right? About what my future is going to bring. Right. I want the connection that a medium brings. So there's all of these things that, other people are going to be involved in other aspects of it. And that's good. All I can share, Wendy, is my experience, strength, and hope. And this is how it works for me. The mirror, the candle, no bueno. No good for me, right?
Yes.
But 3 o'clock in the morning with the sage, I'm in, right? I'll go to I went to, and you read it in the second book, I went to Lilydale, which is the oldest spiritual community in the country. And I'm going to go to Cast Dagger, which is another spiritual community up in Tampa, when I'm in Florida next month, right? Mm. I love this. I love finding out thin places. And for me, the great beaches on the Gulf Coast of Florida, thin place. My son just, a connection between the sand, the quartz crystal, the moon, the water, boom, right? Instant connection. Why? I don't know. Nobody tips me into the maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure it out.
The quartz crystal you talk about, I had no idea about that.
I only knew because my best friend lives in Sarasota. And I was telling him about this experience, or he was reading it, and he goes, that's quartz crystal. And to be honest with you, I thought it was folklore, right? Yeah, okay. I'm sure it is. I didn't believe it until I went home, researched it. I called him, I said, dang, Alan, that's real. That's 2,000 years ago, quartz crystal floated down from the Appalachian Mountains and occupied Siesta Key. So if you go out, if you're on Siesta Key and it's 95 degrees, you can walk in bare feet, never get hot. It's 99% quartz crystal. And it's, Lido Key, which is another spiritual place, which is the next key up, isn't quartz crystal. It's sand, but it's still a magnificent thin place for you. So these are the things that I'm trying to, and when I figure it out, I put it on paper and then we talk about it so that maybe, I have people from all over the country. Now, if they're anywhere near Sarasota, they go to Siesta Key and they bring back, planters jars or of quartz crystal, sand from Siesta Key, and keep it on their desks or in their office or in their kids' graves, right? Mm-hmm. Holy camole. This is awesome. So, these are the things that I'm trying to figure out. So, Lilydale was an amazing thin place for me. I couldn't believe the energy that I felt there. I went to Sedona, and I would love to tell you I've hit 1,000, right? I've banded 1,000, and every thin place I've nailed. I went to Sedona, and maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 3 or 4. It was okay. But I was pretty disappointed. I wanted to be moved. I wanted to be moved by spirit. Didn't happen, right? Yeah. So all I'm trying to do is do some of the footwork, report back what works for me. But everybody's got to figure out their own path. Find out your own thin places, right? What works for you? I can't wait. In a week and a half, I'll be down in Florida, and my connection with Chris is really strong at night on those Gulf Coast beaches, especially Siesta Key and Lido. So I'll be making journeys up there because it's worth it. Round trip 3 hours to connect with your kid and feel this intensity. I'm in. Sign me up.
Okay, you're giving everybody else the incentive to go to a beach.
Go to the beach, man.
Go to the beach.
I can tell you. Go to the beach, bro.
That's what I mean. That's what Christopher says. It's a beach. I'm here in heaven, and I'm walking on the beach. It's like, okay, all right, heaven on earth would be on the beach.
This is such a cool insight. He said, your side is great. He said, think about when you played football, like in high school, and you go to football camp for a week in the summer. He said, and you guys would, it was a lot of hard work and injuries and pain and staking and hot tubs and that they didn't have all these creams. You'd use atomic bomb, on everything that hurt and freeze spread. And he said, but you'd have this camaraderie and this competition and friendship. Some of those friendships last to this day, right? He said, so that's your life. It's great, but it's a lot of work. And sometimes it hurts. He said, my world's a beach bungalow on Maui. Like, wow, we go from okay with some pain to bliss, right? A beach bungalow on Maui. How the frig can you be afraid to die? Don't be afraid.
The book, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. And you're working on another book because he's got things to do and he's putting you through the, through the hoops.
You don't want to know someone. He's doing me a service. He's giving me a break because it's like air to breathe for me. When I was finishing up the first book, My Search, I was feeling a little melancholy. Great Irish term, isn't it? Melancholy. I was feeling melancholy because I had this amazing connection through the whole process. And I was worried that it was going to dissipate at the end of the project, right? How do I know, right? Nobody gave me the rules. Yeah. Right? I'm going to give you and the readers as much as I know, but, the rules are still kind of showing up, as they come. And so I was worried. And then he said to me, hey, Pop, we're not done yet, Pop. He said, we're going to be doing this until you cross. So all of a sudden, I didn't feel a sense of obligation, like I got to keep writing books. I felt this joy in my heart that he's going to continue to inspire and write with me until I'm going to join him on the other side. Holy cow, how do you not love that message?
So if you want to go back to the beginning, the first book, My Search for Christopher, On the Other Side, Joe McQuillen. The second book, the one that's out now, We're Not Done Yet, Pop. And the third book, as you heard, is a work in progress. I'll post links in the description for the show, and I'll also post my blog links, Wendy's Coffee House, and Talking to Nightlights. That's how I got into all this stuff, or at least I became public with all of it when I learned to channel and my nightlights started interacting, which they still do. And it's been almost 25 years, since 1997. So it doesn't go away. It just evolves. That's what's so amazing about this. And it's all part of our consciousness as we learn to connect to these other realms, this other way of being and seeing. Then we grow, we expand. I hope you learned something from the shows, and when you do, pass it on. Thank you, and stay curious.